Hello, my global family. Welcome to another episode of the Global Yadi podcast. I'm your host, Dana Lynn. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, Jamaica is home to over 70 species of mosquitoes, some of which are responsible for spreading deadly diseases like chikungunya, ZV, dengue, and yellow fever. But what if I told you that nature has a way of controlling the mosquito population? Because trust me, they're getting out of hand. And so in today's episode of the Global Yadi podcast, we'll be exploring an unknown ally that is known to reduce the mosquito population, and here to tell us all about the tiny insects that have a huge role to play in reducing the mosquito population, especially in relation to the increasing impacts of climate change and public health, is a friend of Global Yadi, and now, he has always been a researcher, and now he's a doctor of environmental biology. None other than Dr. Gavin Campbell. Gavin.
Hi, Lynn. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Welcome to the Global Yadi podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I was going to say welcome back, but you did stuff with Global Yadi before, but this is an official podcast episode.
Yes.
Now that you've completed your
degree.
Yes, your degree. I was going to say a candidacy. You know how it goes. So yes, I remember it was during the COVID era, you did provide some insight as it relates to how I think it was climate change and the impact on insects. My memory is a little bit foggy now, but I've always been curious, especially now that you've completed your research. Yes. Have you always wanted to study insects? And I'm saying it because when I watch you on social media and your posts, like the insects are his friends. But yeah, tell me about that.
I actually have always loved insects. Whenever I was a kid, I would just go around and I collect them and see how they interact, how they actually do different things. My mom actually has a story of when I was a kid, I would collect different insects. I would collect bees, adult bees and wasps, and I would feed them my spit and sugar or spit and honey. And that was because I read that they were supposed to be, when bees are turning into queen bees, they're fed saliva and honey from the bees. But I thought that my saliva could work. That did not work. But overall, eventually I did learn and I did grow and I got to understand. But I've always been interested in bees and insects and essentially ecology as a kid.
All right. So by the way, and given that backstory, and now that you're here, I want to say congratulations to, any sort of academic pursuit is no easy feat. And then you're doing, having completed your PhD journey, I can imagine how intense, all that science and
a lot of crying, a lot of blood, a lot of sweat and tears, but I'm so glad that I'm finished now.
Okay, right. So how we're here, I saw you post about a research paper that was published.
Yes.
Long name, but we know it says something about back swimmers, and that's why we're here today.
Yes.
So tell us about that, the actual research, or the title, and what's it about. You'll do better than I.
Okay, so the research was focusing on insects called back swimmers, and back swimmers are very, very small insects that swim essentially on their back. They literally swim on their backs. That's why they're called back swimmers. And they are voracious predators in the water. So they would go around and eat a bunch of different things, but one of the things that they really, really like are mosquitoes. So they will go out and search for mosquitoes and feed on those ones, and then they'll help to reduce the mosquito population. The project started because I saw these back swimmers around, and I was wondering what
around
they did.
where, Gavin?
So when I was doing my research, I was finding out what different aquatic insects are in ponds around the campus and across Jamaica. And I saw that these back swimmers were quite common. They were really numerous at times, and they were common across different areas, different parishes overall. And I got to reading and I saw that they really do like mosquitoes. And then from there, the idea of using them to study how much they can actually reduce mosquito populations came into being. So that is where the project started, and it took a lot of months of hard work. I had to feed them my own blood to feed the mosquitoes my own blood to get the populations up so I could have enough to feed the back swimmers to keep the populations going. So it was a lot, but we're done with that.
So a little vampirical activity happened there.
Yeah.
I saw that photo.
Yeah, not many people like
so
that.
when people say blood, sweat, and tears, like you can say you pour your blood into this research.
Yeah.
Not many people get to say that.
That's
it's
true.
Metaphorical over here, but Gavin poured it. So this is personal.
This is personal. There was a lot of time when I did not want to do that part. There are other methods that you could use, but when I was using them, they weren't too effective with getting them to feed on blood. So I had to eventually give them my own blood.
Okay. So when the back swimmers came to your attention, It wasn't bacillus that you were exploring, it was mosquitoes. Like what were so because I wanted to really understand, as I said, while I noticed that bacillus were there in the environment that you were exploring, what exactly did you see to say, what if this is a game changer for mosquito control? What was the connection or the relation or whatever that you saw, the activity that you saw that made you think we're onto something here?
So the thing that actually got me interested in them using them for mosquito control was actually the literature. There have been other research papers that compared how much backsummers eat with respect to mosquitoes versus other insects, and a lot of the times they would choose mosquitoes over the other insects. So it got me interested in wondering how Jamaica's insects or Jamaica's backsummers could be used to control mosquitoes, seeing that we do have some significant mosquito populations. So that's where the idea came from. That's where it started. And originally, even before that, it was just an assessment of different aquatic insects that are on the campus and in Jamaica overall, but then zeroed in on the mosquito control section.
So now through the research, you know how, I don't want to say, well, you know how like we know that everybody talk about Portmore and mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And fine, I'm from Black River, they have mosquitoes too, and now in Kingston, we know how mosquitoes are everywhere.
Yes.
But with the backstream population, so just as how there are geographic locations and maybe physical locations that you can point to say, you know, there is a prevalence of mosquitoes in that area. Is it the same with backstreamers too?
So it's the same with backsummers, but to a smaller extent. Whereas you have a lot of mosquito species up to 70 or 70 and over, the backsummers are very, very few with respect to species. They can be high in numbers, but species are relatively low. At most, there are currently 8 that are known in Jamaica. So those 8 species are going to have to be the ones that help to control mosquito populations. But mosquitoes, well, backsummers themselves are not the only ones that eat mosquitoes, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Right. So I love that you mentioned the species as well. So the ratio to mosquito species ratio to backsummers obviously low, 70 to 8.
Yes.
But does that does that matter? Because is it that it's only certain species of backsummers that eat mosquitoes and someone like, no, I'm vegetarian, you know, like.
So all of them are, none of them are vegetarian, all of them are predators, but mosquitoes and backsummers, they can have different habitats that they live in. So as we know, mosquitoes are very common in different small habitats, but the backsummers themselves, they can't really live in really small bodies of water. So they need bigger bodies of water. So they would be separated by their physical dimensions. So some of them some of the mosquitoes can live in really small habitats.
Yeah.
Whereas the backsummers can, so that prevents them from interacting. So the mosquitoes cannot be eaten in those environments.
All right. So what I want to understand in terms of the scale of effectiveness, because yes, we know that the backsummers eat the mosquitoes, but as you said, you know, we're exploring how effective it is as a means of mosquito population control. At the rate at which they're devouring the mosquitoes, could we see this working and that people don't have to be buying repellents and, you know, fumigate? Well, maybe fumigation always been necessary, but just the scale at which you're doing those things, how effective is this form of biological control?
So unfortunately, we're still going to be needing to use other forms of control. So the non-detectors are really helpful and they do reduce populations. They can eat up to 118 individual mosquito larvae per day. So that's one individual eating 118 per day. But
one individual backswimmer.
So one backswimmer can eat up to 118 mosquito larvae per day.
Okay.
That's a lot. And actually, how much they eat depends on how much mosquitoes there are. So if there are more mosquitoes available, they'll be eating more as much as they can.
They don't have no cutoff point. I know insects have bellies, but
one of the interesting things about them too is that when they start eating, if they have a lot, they're not going to eat everything to completion. So they're going to take a bite out of one, a bite out of the other, a bite out of the other, because there's so much to go around. When there are actually fewer mosquitoes.
Backsummers are gluttonous.
Yes, they're very gluttonous.
Oh my gosh.
Like, if they see a lot of food available, they're going to bite some and drink some.
They're not going to leave anything for their cousins or the family.
They're actually pretty much all for themselves.
How did you get to observe this? Like, are you looking at them through your microscopic lens and like, are you seeing that eating pattern play out? Like, tell me about that. Like, tell me about the scenario that, you know, you actually noticed that happening.
All right. So when I was collecting the different specimens, I had to catch them as adults. And then when the adults were in the lab, I actually put them in containers and they laid eggs. And then I tracked how those individual eggs of those backsummer eggs were able to develop. And then I would feed them the mosquitoes. So I'd have a particular container like this one here.
The dead mosquito eggs. You
This
don't
one is
have
just
to
eggs.
open it, okay?
I will open it, but you have a container like this filled with water. I'd put a backswimmer in there and then put in 100 mosquito larvae, 200 or 400, and then just check back the following day, see how many mosquito larvae are dead afterwards. And I do that over and over and over.
So the larvae is this thing that you could count them?
Yeah, you can pick them out and count them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So as eggs right now, they're really small, can not really see this well. But when they become larvae, the size that I'd want them to be fed to the mosquitoes, to the notonectids, they're pretty sizable. And I have videos of them. You can see hundreds of mosquito larvae just swimming up and down. Some people would not want to see that, but it was pretty cool.
All right, so Maximus obviously sound like they are the apex predator of the mosquitoes, but are there any challenges that could limit how effective they are in controlling? Because we know mosquitoes are smart. The minute you use one thing, especially for the chemicals, we see how sometimes they evolve and adapt to like say, oh, you can't be any humans. And so, you know, what about the Maximus as well? If they see that the Maximus are gunning for them, I don't know.
So that actually is a really, really interesting line of research. So there are a lot of things that would prevent them from interacting with each other. So mosquitoes themselves, whenever they see any body of water, however small it is, they will go and lay their eggs, and then the larvae will develop in those. Backswimmers are going to be limited in the actual body of water. They need a larger body of water than mosquitoes. So when mosquitoes will be selecting for small bodies of water, notonectids will be selecting for higher bodies of water. There's also a difference in time. So my particular research was on temporary ponds. So when rain falls and it fills up an area filled with water, the mosquitoes will be some of the first ones to come in and lay their eggs. The backswimmers take a few days to actually arrive at the pond before they can start eating the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes will have a vacation from notonectids for a little bit, from the backswimmers, which are notonectids.
If you just slip in the scientific, it does sound science like that.
It just happens.
Okay.
So they'll be separated by time as well. So mosquitoes will be there first. They'll be raising their eggs. They'll be raising their children. Well, not raising them, but they'll be growing themselves. But by the time that the backswimmers get there, they may not be in the form that's best for them to be in. So this is going to be a lot. The mosquitoes...
Explain it to us like we're five.
Okay, no problem. So mosquitoes arrive to a new pond. Nothing is in there, no predators. So it's like, okay, cool, nice environment. Let's lay my eggs in there. The eggs take about 6 days or so to develop, but the notonectids come at about day 4 or 5. So they only have about 2 days in which they interact, so the mosquitoes can be eaten by the notonectids or the backswimmers.
Backswimmers, Gavin.
It's so hard. By the backswimmers. So that 2-day period is pretty much the only time that they will have to feed on them. But then after that, they become adults and they fly out, and the notonectids can't feed on the adult mosquitoes. So the adult mosquitoes will go and search for other habitats while the notonectids are feeding on the larvae that are left behind.
How do the backswimmers? They
fly. Yeah, so that's another thing. So even though they're aquatic insects, they can fly.
Because I'm saying, how did they reach the pond? Like, I was really invested in the storyline. So I think we know enough. It has always been said about the correlation with the increasing temperature and increased rainfall. And, you know, we've seen a rise of mosquito populations as a result of that. Again, like we're five, break down because so while that's a known fact, I don't think we really understand the science behind that. So how does that all connect?
Okay, so mosquitoes are more resilient than the backswimmers. Mosquitoes have certain genes that allow them to tolerate higher temperature conditions, so they can be found in environments that have higher water temperatures and that have less oxygen overall. Notonectids are going to be more sensitive. If it gets too hot, the notonectids will die. They'll try to find somewhere else, but if they can't, then they will die. Whereas the mosquitoes, higher temperatures will allow them to proliferate more, but higher temperatures will kill the notonectids. So if there are going to be more mosquitoes surviving and then fewer backswimmers surviving, then there's going to be an imbalance. So the higher the temperature is, the more mosquitoes will be around, but the fewer predators of those mosquitoes will be around. So that's a real problem.
Delicate predators is.
Delicate predators. Yeah. But
I had hope, Gavin, but now I'm...
So the thing is, when I started the project, I really wanted this to be like, okay, let's just get everybody some backswimmers and everything's solved, everything's going to be great. But unfortunately, there are so many different factors that are at play, and mosquitoes are really smart and ingenious with respect to how they move around and how they populate. So it's going to be really difficult to use just one item or one means of control to control mosquitoes for all time and forever.
Okay. All right. So there has been a lot of conversation globally about, you know, also considering more biological means of control for mosquito populations. And so obviously while your research does cover that, but is there any other element you'd say how your research feeds into this global narrative or so on?
With respect to that, I think it would be important to highlight there are not many people that are doing research on biological control. So there needs to be more put into biological control so we can predict and use nature-based solutions to help with our mosquito problems. but there will still be a need for other methods. It could be genetic control of mosquitoes. It could be chemical.
Yeah, plug that. What's
Okay.
genetic control of mosquitoes?
So essentially, there are researchers who work with mosquitoes as well in a different line. So there are chemical control methods. There are biological control methods like the backsummers, and there are also genetic control measures. So when it comes to genetic measures, you can use genes to help sterilize male mosquitoes. They release those male mosquitoes that are sterilized. When they mate with the female mosquitoes, the eggs that they produce will never be able to hatch. So that essentially reduces the mosquito population. There still will be some feeding, they'll still be biting different people, but the eggs that they produce will never be able to hatch, and that's one way to help control the population. But again, with mosquitoes, there are millions of them all around us. It's going to be hard to use one program or one method to do so. So as much as there is going to be biological, genetic, and chemical control, there still needs to be, like, at the individual level, your own personal ways that you control mosquito population. So make sure you wear your repellent, make sure you remove any temporary water bodies that are outside your house, long sleeves and everything. So it's a multi-fold process, but it's really important to help make sure that we can safeguard human health throughout time.
Yeah, that was you asking the very last question, which we aren't even there yet. But so that's on like a global level, and so locally, is there any way to fit your research with backsummers into how we can be doing something that's effective, culturally relevant, or so on?
So that one is something that I'm really interested in. One of the things with respect to that I want to do is find out if there are any correlations between the number of ponds with backsummers in an area and the number of cases of mosquito-borne diseases in a community. So that would be essentially trying to find out if you have more ponds with backsummers, do you have fewer cases of mosquito-borne diseases in communities that have those? And then that would be helpful to help guide research into how we can actually put more ponds in communities to help them reduce mosquitoes in local communities, which is again another nature-based solution of controlling a problem that we do have.
Sounds good. So you mentioned that there aren't many, research focused on the biological controls,
Right.
but do you know if there is any other existing research as how other mosquito predators like fish or dragonfly or whatever could complement what is being done with the backswimmers?
Yeah. So there was a small project that I had done earlier where I was focused on dragonflies. Dragonflies had some challenges, so I had to switch to the backsummers overall. But there are really, really a lot of different predators that eat mosquitoes. Pretty much there's a running joke in the aquatic field. Like if it's a predator, it will eat mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are very abundant. They are going to be found everywhere, and almost everything that's a predator will eat them to some extent. So there are a lot of things like dragonflies, different beetles, and backsummers that will eat them. And even when they're adults, the adult dragonflies will eat the adult mosquitoes as well too. So there are different ways and different measures. But looking into that specifically, I don't know of anyone in the region that's doing anything with respect to biological control of
Okay.
mosquitoes.
All right. So you finished your PhD. What's next? Are you looking into more research? Have you defined another area that you'll be exploring as yet?
So there is going to be more work into mosquito population and mosquito population control in different extents, but there will still be some more work. But my new interest recently has been ants. I like ants. So from one insect to another, I'm just very curious about them. So I want to see more about what goes on in Jamaica.
So what you're gonna be looking at with ants?
So I want to see what different species are around Jamaica. There are so many different ones. According to the research, there are over 100 that have been recorded, different species that have been recorded in Jamaica.
Red ants, black ants, I don't.
That's fine. So that actually, the common names do fall into those different categories as well. There are tropical fire ants, running ants, ghost ants, and different names for them. But I want to find out what different species there are. And then the next thing after that is find out how much they can do for the environment. So how much can these ants break down organic matter? How quickly can they transport seeds and help to disperse plants so they can grow back more quickly? So forests and meadows can grow back more quickly. Like I want to find out how they affect our environment so we can help to protect them.
I love that.
Me too.
And I also feel, so I'm intrigued and guilty at the same time because ants powder, ants spray.
Yeah.
Should I even say this on here? But I mean, that's, ants, we consider them a nuisance.
Yes.
And so I love what you're doing because, aside from people who would just always quick to like pass off as nerdy, we'd never really explore how valuable insects are, to the environment. And it's great that you're pouring into these kinds of areas and providing this needed insight. And so, yeah, I'm really happy to hear that. So, all right. So finally, how can people learn more about your work? How can they access the research paper that we've been talking about around bacillus?
Okay, so the research paper is currently free online. Anybody can find it and Google it. If you have the information, I'll just drop the name and then you can search for it. It's completely free, so go ahead and read.
Drop the name on the journal thingy that's downloaded.
The life history and consumption dynamics and mosquito consumption dynamics of Notonecta indica in eastern Jamaica. The life history and mosquito consumption dynamics of Notonecta indica in eastern Jamaica.
And also, I mean, hope you can also type in Backswimmers, Gavin Campbell, Jamaica in Google.
That will literally work. Yeah, that's much easier.
And it came up. All right. So, I mean, as we're closing out, I remember this. Let's just say that we say in Jamaica with mosquito 1, mosquito 2, mosquito jump in a hot callaloo, mosquitoes get eaten by backswimmers too. So,
ooh, nice. I like it.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Dr. Gavin Campbell.
Thank you so much
for joining us on the Global Yadi podcast and sharing such insightful information around backswimmers and how they can reduce the mosquito population. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Global Yadi podcast. We encourage you as usual to like, share, subscribe, and please drop a comment, talk to us, let us know how you feel, and send some feedback. Take care.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
No, you're very obsessed with the mosquito egg them.